Have you ever wondered how a moment of pure humanity can completely transform the life of a stranger? What you are about to discover happened in a busy shopping mall in San Francisco, California, and forever changed the perspective of hundreds of people who witnessed something extraordinary. At that exact moment, a man was furiously screaming at a 6-year-old child in the middle of a shocked crowd. Phones rose like towers, people whispered nervously, and a thick tension hung in the air, like dense smoke. But to understand how we reached this moment that would leave everyone completely paralyzed, we need to go back 30 minutes, when everything was still just a normal Saturday afternoon. It was possible to feel the contagious energy of a perfect weekend at the Union Square Shopping Center. The sweet aroma of hot chocolate came from the food court, mixed with the comforting smell of new leather from sporting goods stores. Steph Curry walked calmly alongside his 6-year-old son, Cannon, watching how the boy practically vibrated with excitement. "Dad, are you sure I can choose anything for the school sports program?" asked Cannon, his eyes shining with the same competitive intensity that Steph showed on the courts. The question came accompanied by that mischievous little smile that melted any father's heart. "Of course, my champion. Today is about you finding your passion," Steph replied, adjusting the discreet cap he wore to try to go unnoticed. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, he thought, observing the pure happiness stamped on his son's face. Naturally, this leads us to realize something profound about fatherhood. It doesn't matter how many NBA titles you have, how many records you set, or how many people scream your name in arenas. When you're with your child in a shopping mall, you're simply a father trying to nurture a child's dreams. It's impossible not to feel how these moments are the true treasures of life. The mall buzzed with the typical energy of a California weekend. Families passed by carrying colorful bags, teenagers gathered in groups near technology stores, and the soft sound of ambient music created a welcoming atmosphere. Diana Thompson pushed a cart with her 2 young children. Connor Smith discreetly checked security at the main entrance, and life followed its natural and predictable rhythm. Cannon stopped in front of the Dick's Sporting Goods window, pressing his nose against the cold glass. "Dad, look at those baseball bats. Are they like the ones you used when you were a kid?" Steph smiled, feeling that familiar warmth spreading through his chest like hot chocolate. How incredible it is when our children connect our past with their future. Similar. Want to go in and feel their weight? Cannon's breathing accelerated with excitement, creating a small mist on the glass. "Really? Can I?" "True champions reveal themselves off the courts," Steph murmured, a phrase that constantly echoed in his thoughts. During these precious moments with family, that's when everything changed in a matter of seconds. Cannon, in his typical 6-year-old excitement, spun quickly to run toward the store entrance. But fate had other plans that day. His small new sneakers slipped on the polished mall floor, and he collided directly with an expensive display of electronic equipment that Anthony Zhang had just finished examining. The sound of products hitting the floor echoed through the corridor like shattering crystal. Tablets, premium headphones, smart watches, everything scattering across the cold floor like pieces of an impossible puzzle. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the entire mall had stopped to hold its breath. Anthony Zhang stood still for a moment, watching the expensive products scattered across the floor. His hands began to tremble slightly, and it was possible to perceive that something much deeper was boiling behind those tired eyes. Cannon looked up, with that expression of a child who just realized they did something terrible without meaning to. "Sorry, sir. It was an accident, I swear. I didn't mean to break anything." But something in Anthony Zhang's expression changed drastically. The frustration that had been accumulating inside him for months finally found a target. And at that moment, as people began to gather around, no one could imagine that we were about to witness something that would completely change the lives of everyone involved. How many times in life does a moment of childish carelessness transform into the catalyst for revealing deeply hidden pain? Anthony Zhang was about to explode, and Steph Curry would need to decide what kind of man he really was when no one was cheering for him. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, Steph thought again, but this time with a completely different sensation spreading through his stomach like melting ice. The storm was about to begin, but what happened next would change everything forever. Clumsy brat! Anthony Zhang's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade, echoing throughout the mall corridor. Do you have any idea how much this costs? Are your rich parents going to pay for everything? Cannon instinctively stepped back, his eyes filling with tears like small oceans of confusion. The boy had never been verbally attacked that way by a stranger. Steph felt every muscle in his body tense, a primitive protective instinct taking over him like volcanic lava about to explode. Sir, please, he's just a child, Steph began, keeping his voice calm but firm as solid rock. A spoiled child, Anthony continued screaming, now pointing his finger accusingly at Cannon. You rich people think you can destroy everything and just buy another. Well, I can't. You can perceive that there are moments in life where time seems to stop completely, as if the entire universe were holding its breath. People began to crowd around the scene, and the low murmur of worried conversations created a heavy atmosphere like storm clouds. Diana Thompson stopped with her cart, instinctively protecting her own children behind her. Connor Smith approached slowly, assessing whether he needed to intervene. Cell phones began to appear discreetly, like small electronic eyes recording every second. Some people recognized Steph Curry, whispering among themselves with the excitement of those witnessing live celebrity drama. The pressure of the situation multiplied instantly. How is it possible that such a simple moment transforms into something so complex and loaded? Dad, Cannon whispered, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. I didn't mean to. It really was an accident. Steph knelt beside his son, placing a protective hand on his small shoulder. I know, my son. Accidents happen. But his eyes remained fixed on Anthony Zhang, trying to read the layers of emotion unfolding behind that explosion. And it was at that moment that Steph noticed something crucial. Anthony. Zhang wasn't just angry because of the scattered products. There was something much deeper happening. The man's hands were trembling, not just from anger, but from something that seemed like absolute despair. His clothes, although expensive, were slightly wrinkled, as if he had slept poorly for weeks. The red eyes suggested sleepless nights loaded with worry. These products, Anthony continued, now with his voice choked with raw emotion, were for my son. It was his birthday present. And now everything is ruined, just like everything in my life. Sometimes you instantly recognize another father's pain, as if there existed a secret language that only those who have children can understand. Steph felt his anger transforming into something completely different. Deep compassion. The crowd continued growing like an involuntary audience. Rachel Kim, a pediatrician who was off duty, approached carefully. Is everything okay here? Did someone get hurt? No, Anthony screamed, his voice echoing with pain. No one can help. You don't understand. I lost everything. My company, my investments, my house, and now I can't even buy a decent present for my son without some spoiled kid coming and destroying everything. The silence that followed was deep and charged with an almost palpable emotional tension. Suddenly, everyone understood that this wasn't about broken products or childhood accidents. It was about a completely broken man, desperately trying to hold the pieces of his life together with his own hands. Cannon looked up at his father, his childish confusion mixed with surprising wisdom. "Dad, why is he in so much pain? How many times in life do we encounter someone who is going through the most violent storm of their existence, and we don't notice because we're too focused on our own concerns?" Steph felt a deep understanding spreading through his chest like warmth from a fireplace on a cold day. "Sir," Steph said calmly, completely ignoring the phones that continued recording, "may I ask your son's name?" Anthony stopped screaming, looking at Steph with an expression of complete surprise. "You? Didn't you hear me? Your son destroyed everything." "I heard," Steph replied, beginning to bend down to examine the scattered products. "And I see a father who is doing the best he can in a very difficult situation. What's your son's name?" It was at that moment that Anthony Jang really looked at Steph for the first time. And in his tired eyes, something began to change. The anger was slowly being replaced by something he hadn't felt in months, someone actually caring about his pain. "Thomas," he whispered, as if the word were too precious to be said aloud. "He turns 8 tomorrow." True champions reveal themselves off the courts, and Anthony Jang was about to discover the true meaning of those words. No one could imagine that that moment would be the turning point that would change two families forever. Steph Curry, one of the NBA's biggest stars, was kneeling on the cold floor of a shopping mall, carefully examining the scattered electronic products of a complete stranger who had just screamed at his son. The scene was so surreal that many people stopped recording, simply watching in total silence. "What are you doing?" Anthony Jang asked, his voice now lower, loaded with genuine confusion. "What any father would do," Steph replied simply, lifting a tablet that appeared to be intact. "Help another father solve a problem." Cannon, following his father's example like a small brave shadow, began collecting the smaller items. "Sir, this headphone doesn't look broken. It just came out of the box." Anthony looked at the 6-year-old child who was trying to help, even after being mercilessly screamed at. Tears began to form in his eyes like unexpected rain. Have you ever had a moment in life where you realized you were being a complete monster and didn't know how to stop the avalanche of your own anger? I shouldn't have screamed at you, kid," Anthony said, his voice breaking like a dry branch. "It's not your fault. None of this is your fault." Connor Smith approached, offering new bags. "To organize things," he said gently, without judgment. Diana Thompson offered tissues that she always carried in her purse, those that every experienced mother keeps for emergencies. "For the tears," she said, with the softness of someone who understands parental pain. It was impossible not to notice how a simple act of kindness was creating a chain reaction, like waves spreading in a calm lake. Rachel Kim discreetly checked if Anthony was okay, using her medical skills to assess whether he needed professional help. "Listen," Steph said, carefully organizing the products in the new bags. "I've been through moments where I felt I was failing as a father. It might not seem obvious to you, but public success doesn't come with a parenting manual." Anthony looked at him, incredulous. "You? But you're successful, famous. You have everything any father could want to give their children." "I have 4 children," Steph smiled sadly. "And there are days I wake up not knowing if I'm making the right decisions. Success on the courts didn't teach me how to explain why Daddy needs to travel so much, or how to balance fame with presence. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, but sometimes we discover we're not as champion-like as we thought. It was at that moment that the crowd began to really understand what they were witnessing. It wasn't just a celebrity being polite. It was a human being completely human, with another human being. "My son," Anthony began, his words coming out choppy like contained sobs. "Thomas used to see me as a hero. I had a successful technology company, a beautiful house. I could buy anything he wanted. And then I made stupid investments. I lost everything, literally everything." Cannon tugged at his father's shirt sleeve. "Dad, what does it mean to lose everything?" How surprising it is how children's most innocent questions can cut straight to the heart of the human condition. Steph picked up Cannon before answering, choosing words carefully. "It means, my son, when the things you thought mattered disappear, and you discover what really matters." Anthony Kim looked at Steph with an expression that mixed surprise, gratitude, and a sadness as deep as an ocean. "Thomas hasn't seen me as a hero for months. He sees a father who can't even keep simple promises. I promised I would buy this tablet for his birthday 3 months ago. I saved every penny I could." The crowd around was now completely silent. Phones had stopped recording. People were just witnessing that moment of pure human vulnerability happening right before their eyes. "I work 3 different jobs now," Anthony continued, the words coming out like a confession. "Uber at dawn, food delivery at lunch, and office cleaning at night. My wife, she stayed. She understands. But Thomas, he doesn't understand why we can't go to the movies anymore. Why we don't buy the cereals he likes. Why we moved to a small apartment. You can perceive that there are moments in life where someone desperately needs just to be heard, really heard, without judgment." Steph continued organizing the products, but his attention was completely focused on every word. "Anthony," Steph said, using the man's name for the first time, "may I ask a question? When was the last time you and Thomas did something special together that didn't cost money?" Anthony thought for a long moment, his hands stopping trembling for the first time. "Before everything collapsed, we used to build things with Lego. He loved when I invented stories about the characters we created." Cannon immediately became animated. "Dad, I love Lego and stories." Steph smiled, but kept his focus on Anthony. "What if I tell you that I believe you can still be the greatest hero in Thomas's life?" "How?" Anthony asked, genuinely curious. "I have nothing left to offer him." Naturally, this leads us to realize a fundamental truth about fatherhood that our society often forgets. Children don't need perfect or rich fathers. They need present fathers. Fathers who try, fathers who care enough to save every penny to buy a gift, even when they're struggling to survive. And it was at that moment that Steph Curry made a decision that would change everything. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, and everyone was about to discover exactly what that meant in practice. And it was then that the truth finally came to light about what it means to be truly successful in life. "Anthony," Steph said, looking directly into the man's eyes, "what Thomas really wants for his birthday is to have his father back. The father who invents stories and builds imaginary worlds with Lego." Anthony remained silent for a long moment, processing the words as if they were bitter but necessary medicine. "But I promised the tablet." "What if I help you keep that promise?" Steph said calmly. Will you promise me that you'll spend Thomas's entire birthday doing what you used to do together? I can't accept charity, Anthony replied, his pride fighting against his desperate need. Naturally, this leads us to realize a profound truth about human dignity. Sometimes, the greatest kindness we can offer someone is the opportunity to give something back, to keep their dignity intact. It's not charity, Steph said, a genuine smile spreading across his face. It's an investment. I'll buy the tablet for Thomas, but I want you to do me a favor in return. Anthony looked at him with cautious curiosity. What kind of favor? I want you to come with me to the next Warriors game. Bring Thomas. I want to introduce you both to my children. And after the game, I want you to tell your story to some business people I know. Not about your failures, but about your resilience. Cannon clapped with excitement. Dad, Thomas can meet Riley and Ryan and Caius. How incredible it is when our children teach us about inclusion and natural acceptance. Cannon had instantly adopted Thomas as a new friend, without thinking about socioeconomic differences or family circumstances. You don't understand, Anthony said, tears now flowing freely down his face. I'm no longer the successful person I used to be. I have nothing to offer business people. You have something much more valuable, Steph replied. You have the experience of someone who lost everything and still continues fighting every day for their children. That's exactly the kind of determination that successful people respect. Diana Thompson approached, carrying her own children. Sorry to interrupt, but I heard you talking about new beginnings. I'm a corporate event organizer. I'm always looking for authentic speakers who talk about real overcoming. Connor Smith also joined the group. And I'm part of a mentorship program for entrepreneurs who have gone through financial difficulties. We meet every Thursday night at the local library. Rachel Kim offered a business card. I work at a clinic that offers free services for families in transition. If Thomas needs psychological support during this phase, it was impossible not to feel how kindness spread like sunlight through dark clouds. A simple act of compassion was creating an entire network of human support. I don't understand, Anthony said, looking around at all the people, offering genuine help. Why are you doing this for me? I was horrible to this child. Because we've all been lost at some point, Steph replied, his voice loaded with lived wisdom. And someone extended their hand to help us find our way back. Cannon tugged again at his father's shirt sleeve. Dad, can we buy Lego too? For Thomas and me to build things together? Steph looked at his son with a pride so immense it almost hurt physically. How extraordinary it is when our children teach us about forgiveness, generosity, and the human capacity to transform conflict into connection. What do you think, Anthony? Steph asked. Next Saturday, Thomas's birthday, morning building Lego, afternoon at the Warriors game. Anthony remained silent for a long moment, watching Cannon carefully organize the products in the bag, then looking at all the people around, offering genuine support, and finally returning to Steph. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, he repeated slowly, now completely understanding the meaning of the words. I accept everything. The game, the Lego, the help, and I promise I'll spend the entire day with Thomas doing everything we used to do. The crowd that had formed began to slowly disperse, but many people left contact information with Anthony. Diana Thompson wrote down his number for future speaking opportunities. Connor Smith explained about the mentorship program. Rachel Kim ensured that Thomas would have emotional support if needed. 3 weeks later, Anthony Jiang was sitting in the Chase Center bleachers next to Thomas, watching Steph Curry make history on the courts. Thomas firmly held a Lego figure he had built with Cannon in the morning, a superhero they called Brave Daddy. "Dad," Thomas whispered during a timeout, "you're braver than any basketball player." "Why, son?" "Because you never gave up on me, even when everything got difficult." Anthony felt tears of gratitude forming in his eyes. During the week, he had given his first lecture on business resilience to a group of young entrepreneurs. 3 people offered consulting opportunities. He wasn't rich again, but he had something infinitely more valuable: hope. During another timeout, Steph looked at the bleachers and waved to the Zhang family. Anthony waved back, holding his son, smiling in a way he hadn't been able to for almost a year. Cannon, now wearing a Warriors shirt he chose especially for the game, tugged at his father's sleeve. "Dad is helping people better than making 3-pointers?" Steph smiled, picking up his son. "Much better, my champion. Much, much better." And at that moment, in the packed Chase Center bleachers, surrounded by his family and a family he helped rebuild, Steph Curry knew he had scored the most important basket of his life. A basket that wouldn't appear in any statistics, but that forever changed the course of several lives. True champions reveal themselves off the courts, and this was a victory that no one would ever forget. A victory that proved that sometimes the greatest superpower we can have is simply the courage to extend our hand to someone who is falling and help them get back up again. Because in the end, it's not the trophies that define our legacy. It's the moments where we choose to be human first and everything else after.